Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So you did have an interesting childhood because well, I'll let you say.
Well, my father was in the diplomatic corps, so we moved around a lot. So I was exposed to a lot of different cultures and countries. I was born in California, but we left by the time I was 2 for Ecuador, and then from Ecuador we went back to California, and then New York, Venezuela. My father was appointed by Richard Nixon to be the Peace Corps director of Venezuela. So we were there and I loved Venezuela. And then from Venezuela to Spain, Spain to Iran, Iran to the Shah was in power, and then he was kicked out, so we ended up hightailing it to Arizona, where my mother had residency there. She was born in Mexico, but we voted through Arizona. So Arizona, and then Saudi Arabia, and I worked in Saudi Arabia for a little while. And then went to college in Arizona, then New York, Australia. Anyway.
Wow, that's incredible. So you moved around a lot.
I did.
So when you were 2, you said you moved. That was your first time you moved when you left California.
Yeah.
When did you start school? And what country were you in when you started school?
Actually, in Ecuador. I went to a kindergarten there that was run by ex-Nazis, I think. It was pretty terrifying.
Really?
And I always loved to draw, and I clung to, my mother brought me, and I did not want to be there, and I clung to her, and she took me around. I wouldn't let go of her leg, and then she knew how to trick me. She put me at the table and gave me paper and crayons, and of course I got busy doing drawings, and then forgot that about her, and then looked over my shoulder, and she was gone, and there was all these, tall, very strict, Aryan-looking people.
Strict. So you had an interest in art from very early on, from you 2 years old.
And I have to give a lot of credit to my mom. She always encouraged me. Since I've been drawing since Felix the cat. She would say, "Well, if you eat this spinach, maybe Felix or Popeye will come visit you." And she knew that I needed to draw and paint. So.
Well, you kind of, if you're a creative person, you need to create, right? That's an important aspect of your life, right? I think you
absolutely.
You die internally if you're not actually creating.
Absolutely. I've been going through a bit of difficulty now, getting a divorce, and I thank God that I have my art and writing as well to focus on.
Yeah, I can see, because I saw some of your pieces for Coney Island that you had on your website, extremely detailed. And I thought to myself, the amount of time and detail and focus that it took to create this. Yeah.
Well, I have patience for that, but not for other things, perhaps.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So when you were 2 years old, I guess you had to learn Spanish. You learned Spanish in...
Yes, not fluently, but... and then, of course, my mother is Mexican. But my father actually spoke better Spanish than my mom, and he's from Chicago.
Oh, really? Where was he born? What was his background?
He was born in Chicago and then grew up in California, but he was half Irish, or part Irish, half Cherokee Indian, and Russian Jew.
Really?
Mix, yeah.
And he spoke Spanish?
Well, he learned Spanish because for his job in Ecuador, and he was a very intelligent man, so he picked it up quickly. And,
was your father a big part of your life when you were traveling through all these countries? Was he there, or was he busy because of his work?
He was there, but I've always been closer to my mother. My father was busy with his work in the diplomatic corps, and more of a stoic character, but a character, definitely a character. In Venezuela, we had, I don't know if you want to include this, but we had like a pack rat outside in our courtyard.
What?
A pack rat or something that was terrorizing my mother and our family. And so he comes home from work, and he goes in his bedroom, and he's, just a minute, drops his briefcase down. We hear all these drawers opening and closing, and he came out in a pith helmet and shorts and an air pistol and boots, and he marches through the house and goes out into the courtyard, and this poor pack rat tries to get away and starts crawling up the wall, and he aims and turned around and went back in, and
Yeah, that was it.
He was a character.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned stoic, but it was fairly common and acceptable for men to be stoic back
Yes.
then, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing I think has changed a lot in newer generations. The men tend to not be as stoic or as
We would hope.
yeah.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think like the millennials nowadays. I find that they're a little more sensitive and much more aware of other people and accepting of other people
True.
and more
true.
communicative.
And he was very supportive. I mean, it always surprised me. He my mother told me that your dad wants you to go to grad school or, to get your MFA, and he wants to support that. Or so anyway, he would do things, but not
Not express them.
right.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
certain things, if
Yeah.
you don't learn them
Mm-hmm.
when you're young and if you don't have that, maybe intellectually you understand that maybe you should have been a certain way,
Right.
but it's
Right.
very different to actually have to go through the process of doing it,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
getting out of your comfort zone, maybe.
Right.
It's expressing and feeling those emotions that maybe you weren't taught
Mm-hmm.
when you were younger.
And he was the only child, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And I guess his parents might have been stoic too, right? Or they might have been.
Somewhat. He actually, his parents divorced back in the time when people didn't do that, and so he was really raised by his dad. So I don't know if that affected his stoicism too, but
Did you know him?
just barely. He died when I was young, when I was about 2. We were in Ecuador at the time.
No, I mean your husband's father.
No. I'm talking not my husband, my father's father.
Oh, your father's father.
My
Okay.
father's father.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you don't remember much about him.
No, not too much.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. So you were in Ecuador. You learned Spanish. What did you
Mhm.
go to next after that?
From Ecuador, we came to New York. To California, and then New York, and but I would say the favorite part of my childhood was probably in Venezuela and Spain, and because I was in my teens then, and the culture there, I was embraced the colors of Venezuela, the traditions and the food and the people, the indigeneity. I think it gave me appreciation of other cultures. So.
And you were in Spain. Have you been to France?
I actually went to school. I forgot that. I took a semester and went to school in Paris.
Yeah.
When I worked in Saudi Arabia, then I was able to do that.
Tell me about France, the art in France.
Oh, well, so I went to, it was part of Parsons School of Design when I was there. But so I took a journalism class, and my job was to go to museums and write about what exhibitions that were up and do little drawings, and it was great.
Yeah.
It was, and I did etching there. I learned to do printmaking in Paris. I had a wonderful teacher. I did photography also. And also took a writing course about writers in Paris during the 1920s, 30s.
Because I ask you about Paris because I know that in France, one of the biggest attractions is tourism, and that's because of the beauty.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of the architecture and the beauty of the country.
Absolutely.
The beauty of the art and museums, just the great impact that art has in people's lives.
Well, that probably was what drew me, that romanticism about, Paris used to be the artistic hub of the world. I think it's New York now, and it may be shifting to who knows where else. Even like Mexico City has a booming art world now, art scene. So.
Yeah, it's very colorful art from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think all of this says is that the creativity, the artist enriches lives. I mean, in France, it brings tourists or helps the economy, right?
Yes.
Right?
Well, we would hope that we would enrich lives.
Yeah. No, I just think it's something that people can learn. In other words, even if you are not artistic or even if you don't appreciate art, you can start small steps, learn a little bit about art. Just like learning how to write or learning how to walk or learning how to communicate.
Right.
You start with small steps and small appreciation of what it takes to create a piece of art, how it can beautify your home, your life, your environment, your office, your desk.
Yeah.
And maybe that little step brings you to another level where you become more knowledgeable about other art pieces and the effect that they have on your life.
Yeah. Whatever I've appreciated about you, working with you and your son, Christian, is that you were willing to experiment with me, like for this piece in particular. This is a giclée of the original that you made for me, but I was experimenting because I've done solar plate etchings, but small ones, and you have to expose them with light, either artificial light or sunlight. But this was a large plate that I was working on, and so we had to find the right materials, right? I ran into the city to BH Photo to buy the proper sort of acetate that the ink would actually adhere to, and I appreciate you guys like being patient and
you're very
experimenting
welcome.
with that.
Especially because this piece has a lot of meaning. In case it's not very visible in the video, it says "Aquí estoy," which means "Here I am." Right. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I actually just presented the other giclée to Deborah Barrios. She's a Guatemalan woman who was racially profiled. She was driving to one of her 3 jobs and pulled over by a policeman. She looks very indigenous. And she said, "What's wrong with my car?" And the officer said, "I'll do the questioning here." And then asked for her papers. And so she had come to Westchester, New York, I think 14 years previous, because her brother had been kidnapped and almost killed, and she knew she was next, and I think there was some domestic violence.
So she had to flee.
Yeah. So she came, and her son was born in New York, and her son, who's now 11, and her daughter, who's 4. And so she came home and told them that she was going to have to go back to Guatemala. And he said, "But Mom, I don't want to go to Guatemala. This is my country. Who's going to take me to soccer practice?" And so her other option was to go to a sanctuary church, which is where she was up until recently. And now she's sort of in a safe place. It was very difficult for her, but she did not sit idle while she was in this church. She wrote a play, and she acted in the play.
Really?
She was studying for her GREs because she wants to go into social justice. So when I first met her, she put her hands like that across her chest, and she said, "Aquí estoy," because I had asked her, where do you get your strength to not be able to walk outside, to be separated from your family? She said, "Aquí estoy." This is from where I get my strength.
Yeah.
But it also has the double meaning of here I am.
Here I am.
I'm trapped. I'm here.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I presented her this piece, and she cried last Wednesday, and we all cried, everyone. But she is symbolic to me for her strength, but she symbolizes thousands of people who are in this similar situation. And as she put it, families aren't being separated just at the border, they're being separated all across the country. And I think the reason she finally left the church was she was very worried about her son and her daughter. Her daughter was staying with her in the church, but of the permanent damage that this may do to her children.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're hoping for the best for her. She has good lawyers, but it's, she goes down to City Hall to give her thumbprints to do the processing for asylum, and she knows that ICE is just in the floor above, and any minute they could just grab her and ship her out. So
yeah, that's a scary situation to be in, to live like that from day to day.
Yeah, under that shadow.
How long was she in the church?
15 months. 15 months
15
without
months.
being able to walk outside. I mean, she went out once to go to City Hall to do the paper processing with her lawyers, but when she left, everyone in the church were crying and thinking that we may not see you again, but she was able to go and come back that one time. And then I guess, she said the good thing that came out of being separated is her husband has learned to cook more.
That's the one advantage.
Yes, yeah, but
Yeah. Well, you mentioned domestic abuse. There was a domestic abuse at
it wasn't with her husband,
No.
but it was family.
Family.
I don't know, she's kind of alluded to that.
Yeah, well,
it was
that's-
not a safe situation for her.
Yeah, unfortunately, domestic abuse is something that, regardless, right? Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter what country, doesn't matter
Right.
what language you speak or what you look like.
But it used to
Yeah.
be something that gave you access to getting asylum in this country, and Jeff Sessions got rid of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so and they've made it harder and harder to to be here
Yeah.
legally.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They're easily targeted. All right. These are individuals that are easily targeted because of the way they look,
Mhm.
easily to identify them,
Right.
or to, I guess, take advantage or abuse them if they're on the road or
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
walking on the street. Or
Yeah, and I feel, my mother was a Mexican immigrant. My grandmother was a Mexican immigrant into this country, and so I feel this is a personal matter for me.
Right.
It's a personal struggle, I guess, I feel very privileged that I don't I live under that fear. I don't have to worry about somebody tapping my shoulder and saying, "Come with me, you have to leave."
right.
And also I think I inherited a lot of my Irish, I don't
Right.
typically look
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
Mexican or a Latin American
Right.
person, but people don't know that people in Mexico are of all colors. But
Well, yeah. There's a lot of
Yeah.
Mexicans that do look like you,
Mhm,
right over
right,
there, and,
right,
and
right.
yeah, all over South America, who are blonde
Absolutely.
or white skinned
yeah,
and don't look like what somebody might assume a typical Spanish person may look like.
right, because Mexico has been overrun by Europeans, the French and Germans and English
Right.
for many years. I mean, the food is influenced by the French.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, by Maximilian being there. I mean, all the sauces, a lot of
Yeah.
the sauces are influenced.
Oh, that's
French.
interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Even queso fundido. I think.
oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the Swiss
Cheese.
the cheese fondue.
Yeah.
Fondue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
didn't put the
And
two
where
two
my
together.
mother was born, she was born in a little town called La Choy, but it's pronounced in French Le Choix. It was founded by French.
And what does it mean?
The choice.
The choice.
Yeah. It was in a tiny little mining town near the Copper Canyon. This is my grandfather got the gold fever. He had a very good business in Los Mochis, a mechanic business back in the 1920s, 30s, and got the gold fever and sold everything and moved his family up into the jungle of the Copper Canyon, lost everything. Oh, that's the painting that you saw at the Lower East Side Girls Club
Yes,
of a
yes.
trunk. Was my grandmother's trunk. They had to sell everything but what they could fit in this one trunk, and they immigrated to the United States.
Yeah, you mentioned that piece. I saw it at the Lower East Side Girls Club,
Mm-hmm.
which is a place that I think, if any, we'll put a link to that site
Good.
as well.
Uh-huh.
It's admirable what they're doing over there.
Oh, yeah.
It's great work.
Mhm.
I know Lynn has done a tremendous work of growing that and providing services for girls in the Lower East Side.
Yes, absolutely. Not just the Lower East Side, but Mexico. That's where our connection. I was doing art workshops for Mayan indigenous people in the rainforest, and then the Highlands. And our connection was there because she has a group of girls that she works with, primarily photography, but all sorts of. So we connected there, and since then, she's sent me down to work on a mural at a cultural institute called Nabalon
Nabalon.
in San Cristobal
Okay.
de las Casas in Chiapas.
Yeah. I would encourage you guys to look at that site and make a donation if you're interested in doing so. They're doing fantastic work.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
are.
And they're doing work
Yeah.
with Flathead Indian tribe in Montana, and then a group of girls in Los Angeles, a group of girls in New Orleans, and I think they even have something going on in West Africa. Oh,
Really?
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, that piece that you were talking about, the suitcase, that's an interesting piece. We want to describe that again?
Well, it has to do with migration and how, well, so my grandfather was actually Irish American. He came down, and as I said, he started this mechanic business. He met my grandmother, who was Mexican, and they married. And when she married a foreigner, she lost, because she was a woman, a Mexican woman. It was very chauvinistic back then. She lost her citizenship, her Mexican citizenship.
Really?
If she had been a Mexican man marrying a foreigner, they both would have gained Mexican citizenship. But she lost it, so she could no longer own land or vote in Mexico. And then they lived there for, 15 years together, between living in Los Mochis and then the canyon. But when they immigrated to the United States, she was denied citizenship because she was Mexican. So for many years she had no citizenship.
She had no home.
She had no country, basically,
Yeah.
which I think is just demoralizing.
It's demoralizing, absolutely.
But also a very strong woman. She wanted to learn English before she met my grandfather. In fact, that's why they sort of came together, because his Spanish was terrible. So she had studied on her own English, and he found her like in one of the fairs, church fairs, and he came up to her to ask her to translate.
And that's how they met.
How it began. Yeah.
Yeah. So that piece you're talking about is a very interesting piece. You have a suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
You have the identification of your grandmother. Right.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting piece, and I noticed that about a lot of your work, where you actually have the documents of your family members,
right,
actually embedded into the artwork, in their photographs,
right,
and then there's artwork behind it that tells a story.
Mm-hmm. Like the piece we were just talking about, I call it my dear heart, because I love puns, which is horrible, but I do love. But it's an image of a deer, because where my grandmother's family is from Mazatlan, and it means the land of the abundance of deer in a Nahuatl language. And so I figured that that my family, my maternal family, is from the Mayo, not Mayan, but the Mayo Indians, also called Yoreme Indian.
Okay.
And they're Nahuatl speaking from Mazatlan area. But so that whole, I do have some collage in there of old documents, like you said, of my grandmother and my great-grandmother. And I like working with painting and collage, and even with printmaking lately. Actually, this strip down here that's not collage, but it's called Shinkole, where you print paper on top of paper.
Paper on top. Yeah.
And I did other versions of Deborah, where I incorporated collage and Shinkole. And I think the difference between collage and Shinkole is you print on top of it, and collage is what you paste on top of the painting. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
This interest of painting the human side of social suffering, is something that you've always done?
I think I love portraits. I've always been interested in people, and that's why I did portraits for the New Yorker magazine for many, many years. I mean, I think the face is like a landscape, but I've always been interested in people. So, but it's only recently that I feel the most purposeful, because of what's going on in our country and across the world, really, with this racism that I think artists and writers, now is our moment to really speak up and say what we believe. In my past, I went into the Lacandon jungle, and I approached art more as a documentary artist. Artist as visual journalism almost, where I felt my purpose was to
To
kind of
represent,
stand
yeah.
back and
Mhm.
document,
Yeah.
especially the Lacandon people, because their culture was vanishing. And I started that in the early 1990s, and their culture, I mean, has definitely changed drastically.
And you were probably encouraged not to be involved.
Well, not by the people themselves. I mean,
No, I'm
they
talking about your career.
I guess I felt more as I've always felt, maybe because of how I moved so much, I've always kind of felt as an outsider.
Right.
But now I've lived on Long Island longer than I've lived anywhere, and I see these atrocities going on around me, and this, friends of mine, because their skin's darker than mine, being treated terribly, unfairly. That now I feel like, I'm not just going to stand by and document this. I want to I want people to know what I feel about it, and that I think it's wrong. And I want people like Deborah to be viewed as human beings, with a story. So
There's probably a lot of like-minded artists like you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like my friend
Yeah.
Carlos Morales, who's
Yeah.
primarily a photographer and filmmaker, but he's done some silkscreen. And we were introduced in a show at the Smithtown Arts Council. The art director there, Allison Cruz, who's married to a Puerto Rican, she said, "You have to meet Carlos. You have so much in common." And it's true. It's just like when we're friends right away, because we have this passion about art as kind of activism and this humanitarian concern.
Yeah, I've met Carlos, and I agree with you. He's got passion, and I think he's accomplished a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's trying to unite and get a lot of people together, like-minded individuals.
Right.
And
that's what we're trying to set up, the Latino Arts Council of New York. So, and it is actually, it's set up. It's a not-for-profit. We just have to kind of get it off the ground and look for a place to exhibit art. And we were talking about bringing. There's a huge divide, I think, between the North Shore of Long Island and the South Shore. There's a large Latino population in Patchogue, Islip, Brentwood, and the North Shore is more sort of the Caucasian. And we're trying to, not that there aren't Latinos in the North Shore, but we're trying to bridge this gap.
Right.
And bring artists together from all parts of New York.
And I think a great thing about doing that is that people, once they meet individuals that are different, become more accepting and see them as humans and individuals, instead of some image that they may have of someone that being at their level,
Right.
or needing respect to be
Right.
respected. So
Right.
I think that's fantastic, and I hope that maybe some of the people that are listening to this video can help you and bring some resources to you.
Me too.
And we'll put a link to your site so that
Great.
hopefully they can offer ideas, or maybe they know artists that have similar concepts and feelings. Maybe they also want to unite people.
Great.
Because it doesn't matter where you're from. We're all human beings,
Right.
right? And if there are so many like-minded artists from all over the world that could help each other and spread the word,
Yeah.
promote each other's work.
Right.
You know?
I mean, I've been painting images that, Mexican themed work for over 30 years probably. And people used to term it as ethnic art. Do you want to
That
show
word,
your
ethnic,
ethnic
yeah.
art?
Yeah.
And I think it's now time to go beyond that
Right.
term. All of a sudden it's become a little more relevant. I think my work, not just being looked at as decorative, but
Yeah, because it's actually happening right now, and
Right.
everybody's aware of it, and has more meaning.
yeah.
And
I'm very, very, very proud of my Mexican heritage. I have Irish blood and Cherokee and all this, and Russian Jew, but it was always my grandmother and my aunts that would come wherever we lived and bring masa for our tortillas and beans and chilies and and make us feel that we had this tie to our roots, largely through food, but
Yeah.
and language, no matter where we were. And so
And you're such a great example of what an American is, right? Somebody that comes from so. You are.
Yes, yeah.
And that's a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
Right? And you lived in so many countries, right? And you were educated in different countries.
Yeah.
Right? So.
But I always say, my heart is Mexican.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
you were
North
also
American.
you were also in Iran, was it, or Iraq?
Iran.
Yeah.
Iran and Saudi Arabia.
And in Iran, you were also studying. You were a young girl at that time.
Iran, yes, I was in high school then. Yeah.
So how did that work for language? You were mostly with other American children.
Yeah, I went to usually international schools that their main language was English.
Right.
So, although I wish in Venezuela I'd been sent to a Spanish-speaking school. My Spanish would have been much better.
You would get a better understanding of the language.
But
so was that difficult because you're moving on, so you're kind of making friends and then leaving friends, right?
It may have been difficult, but in a way it was really good for me because I think it sort of forced me. I think naturally I'm a little bid shy, and this forced me. I'd have to find where am I going to set my lunch tray down, in September, when school would begin. I'd have to make new friends.
You'd have no choice.
Each time, yeah. So, I'm sure that's affected me in many ways, and I think mostly positive. And also, my parents had the burden of packing up and moving, and
right.
I just went along for the ride. But the only thing I had to do was make new friends each year, and
well, it's still hard.
Good.
I mean, especially when you're young, you're looking to establish roots. You're looking to maintain your friends.
Part of me envies, some of my friends that have lived on Long Island all their life, and they have friends since they were 3 or whatever. And, but I've lived long enough now that I have friends that I've known for 30 years, and maybe I was able to make all these friends because I was a little more gregarious. I was forced to be a little more gregarious.
Yeah, so it actually forced you to come out of your shell. You said you were a little bit shy. Mm-hmm. I think that happens when people are introverted or extroverted, and you kind of have to adjust to the situation.
And I think there's a similarity, Carlos and I were talking about this yesterday, between he and I, and even Lynn, that we take pleasure in making connections with people and connecting those people to other people. And that's probably part of why we want to do the Long Island Artists, the Latino Artists Council of New York, is just connecting people. Yeah. And I really do enjoy that.
I think that's a wonderful thing. I think we all have good sides. We all have bad sides. We all have everything. But we are all human beings, and we could all learn from each other. And I think when people meet somebody that's different from them, maybe they have a little more respect and appreciate that person more, and appreciate that somebody may be a foreigner, or maybe they have different views, but still we're all human beings. Yeah. You mentioned Lynn before. People may not know who Lynn is. So you want to explain a little bit about her?
Lynn Pentecost she's the director of the Lower East Side Girls Club, who she was a professor at NYU for anthropology, visual anthropology, which I wish I had known. Yes, I would have gone for visual anthropology because of the work I did with the Lacandon.
So you were kind of doing it.
Yeah.
Without knowing what it was.
Anyway, but she was living in the Lower East Side, had 2 young sons, this is the early 1990s, and there were all these boys' clubs, but no girls' clubs there. And so her friends were complaining, and she said, well, let's start a girls' club. So they started this little grassroots, and they're like a tiny little storefront place, and then she just has a way of connecting people and finding people to do things, pro bono or whatever.
Well, she's impacted a lot of girls' lives.
Yes.
It's amazing what they've done, what they've accomplished. Now they have their own big building.
Right, with a planetarium and an art studio and a science lab and a maker's lab and
computer lab. I think they have a large
sound room and, it's amazing.
And they offer events for the girls.
Right. I mean, and so Michelle Obama launched her book launch was at the Girls Club, and she attracts a lot of wonderful people.
Yeah, it's amazing what Lynn has accomplished. It's very admirable.
Yeah.
And I think she's affected a lot of people's lives in a very positive way.
Absolutely. Me, I'm the piece that I have. So we have a show up right there right now called Love No Borders. That there are a number of Mexican photographers that came up from Chiapas that are in that. And then Carlos Morales has some photographs, and a woman artist by the name of Maria de Los Angeles, then myself, and I'm sure Jorge Pinto. He does these mosaics all throughout the.
Yes.
He's from Guatemala.
I saw some of his work. Yeah.
But also he MetroCards. He cuts them into these amazing intricate
really?
collages. Yeah. But I was going to say though, but the big piece that I have hanging up there, it's called Welcome, and it has a big bus in it. And, if Lynn hadn't sent me down to Chiapas to work on the mural, I don't know if I would have made that piece.
You're talking about the one with the yellow bus?
Yes.
The one with the driver is.
It looks
similar to
Jeff Sessions.
Yes.
He's a white guy, an older white guy with dark sunglasses. Yes. And it started with a dream that I had. So it's probably the most surreal piece I've ever done. But I was trying to get on this bus, and it was being driven by these old white guys with dark sunglasses who would not let me on the bus. So it has to do with the exclusion, not. And that's where it started, and it just went off, to not being welcome into this country, and there's some La Lloronas in there to symbolize lost children, who's a legendary figure, this wailing woman, basically, and the wall, and the background is the view that I had from my parents' ranch in southern Arizona that is called Chiricahua's stronghold. Cochise' stronghold, sorry, it's the Chiricahua Mountains. But it just made me, I wanted to represent those mountains because Mexico and the United States are always fighting over territory. Well, that land belonged to indigenous people well before Mexico and the United States existed. So it's all about, being kicked, forced away, or not allowed, and onto things. So, but if I hadn't worked on the mural in Chiapas, I don't think I would have done a piece quite like that.
Why?
Just because there's so much going on, but I felt freer to just keep going with it. And whereas typically I do more like portraits, like single figures, even if there's a busy, like the Coney Island, and I love Coney Island. My attraction to Coney Island was it's the colors of Latin America. It's hand-painted signs. It's this movement of people, and there are also a lot of Latin Americans that come to Coney Island.
Yeah.
So, but even so, in a busy scene like that, there's usually, most of my images, there's usually like one person that's really
there's one or two people that you had one where I think somebody was standing behind the counter in Coney Island, and the one you see a lot of food, very detailed artwork. The background is very detailed, and there's one person working there.
I've always been attracted to outdoor vendors, and they're in Mexico. The outdoor vendors, they're selling, their produce is just so, it's artwork in itself. The way it's beautifully arranged, and so, and there's and it goes back to Aztec times. If you ever go to Mexico City, there's the Museum of Anthropology. There's this whole market scene that's miniature market scene of the Aztecs, and and it's this community and exchange and gossiping and selling things, and
well, it's how they live, and that's the only way they're staying alive, right? I mean, that's what they depend on for their own livelihood, right? That's all they've got,
right?
Well,
agricultural people in particular, but. And I just like that it's such a, it's been going on for centuries, this kind of outdoor vending. And I think it's such a different atmosphere than going to Macy's,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's much more humanizing, and it's also colorful, and you're interacting with human beings, not
Right.
not counters and racks of
Right.
items that you're buying and so on.
Right. So Coney Island even has some of that too. So that was my attraction to Coney Island.
So you're very much into the human contact.
Mm-hmm.
You're very much into that.
Yeah, that's what makes life worth living. I think for me,
It does.
Anyway,
It does.
is human interaction.
Was your mother like that too, or is your mother like that?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I would say. Yeah. I'd like to think that I'm like my mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned you were going to Arizona. There's another situation there going on over there where you may.
I
an
hope
opportunity to do some
I
artwork?
have to see if I can. I've spoken to a journalist, but I have to see if I can track down another Guatemalan woman that was, because her daughter was born in the United States when she, so her husband, she and her husband were here in Georgia working in an agricultural farm or whatever, and the daughter was born, and then they went back to to Guatemala, and the husband became very abusive, and not good with the daughter either, and so the mother and daughter came to the United States to try and seek asylum,
Yeah.
and because the daughter was a U.S. citizen, she was taken away from the mother, and the mother was sent to detention, and the daughter was put with a foster care, and was going at threat of being adopted, set up for adoption.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah. So they were separated for 9 months, but apparently they were reunited. But I don't know the end of the story. I've just contacted the journalist who wrote an article about this. And
This was in the New York Times.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And so I'm hoping that I'm going to Arizona. I'm hoping that maybe I can meet this mother-daughter and do another portrait just to show their another story.
And Miss Barrios was also in the New York Times, right, when this first happened.
She's, she said to me actually that, I've seen 17 journalists and I'm still here, aquí estoy.
Yeah.
I want to talk to a congressman or somebody who can change laws next time. She's her story. You knew of her story.
Yes, I knew about her story before we met. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, and I told her that you knew.
So the 17 journalists, at least the message got out, right?
Mm-hmm.
The word got out.
Right.
And
she's a very public case, but there are other women in New York City who are also in sanctuary their stories are not. They don't, for whatever reason, don't want to publicize it. Maybe it puts them too much at risk.
Yeah.
But there may be. I talked to one of the lawyers that represents Deborah, and she may put me in touch with another woman that she felt would benefit from having her portrait.
Well, I can understand that not everybody wants to be in the limelight.
Right.
Sometimes people are just shy or introverted or
Right.
simply afraid.
Right.
Right. And it's also a big burden to carry with you that now you live with that your whole life, or maybe you're constantly in the news, maybe your situation gets worse over time, and maybe you do get deported.
Right.
But it's a big burden to carry with you and to
Yeah.
live with, and that it affects not only you but your family, or your
Right.
spouse, or your children, and other family members.
Yeah.
So I can understand that some people just don't want to, even though they're stuck.
Right. Well, even Deborah, a fairly well-known photographer, whose name I won't mention, came to photograph her and got to know her daughter and her son. And she took a lot of photographs and then published an article without Deborah's permission depicting her children. And her son has been harassed in school because of her story. So she doesn't want to I started a much more complicated painting that I haven't finished yet of her, and I don't know if I will, but I wanted, originally I was going to put a little image of her son in one corner and her daughter in another one. And she said, "Oh, no. Even painting, she didn't
Doesn't want that. Yeah.
So I put a soccer ball to represent her son and one of those little muñequitas,
Yes,
the Guatemalan
yes.
Guatemalan ones, the worry dolls.
Oh, okay, it's
represent
not the
her.
one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then I came back and I felt like I just wanted to do something simple, just her. basically.
Well, it's
So,
just her, but she's representative of thousands of people and thousands of families in the same situation.
She told me, she had also told me that I put the white, sort of a suggestion of white roses around her because she said that she and her brother used to escape some form of domestic violence. They would go into this courtyard that had white roses in it. And there was this overwhelming fragrance and this feeling of safety and security. So that's why I felt, and also, I mean,
it's like a sanctuary for her. Back
and
then.
I think of the Virgin of Guadalupe whenever I think of roses, you know, because of the traditional story.
Yeah.
But anyway, so.
Well, the Virgin of Guadalupe is in a few of your pieces.
Yeah, because I think she is goes beyond just being a religious icon. She is a symbol of solidarity, particularly for the Mexican people. You know, she's a brown-skinned virgin,
Right.
and there's something about her. There's a feeling of mercy about her. She's pregnant. The Virgin of Guadalupe. You know, she's sympathetic with suffering and, you know, loss of children. Her son. So yeah.
Yeah, the good thing is there are a lot of established Latin Americans, people from Mexico who are living here, who have established, who actually have been living here for generations, right? Maybe some of them don't even speak Spanish anymore, right? They've learned the language, they've become Americanized, and they're serving the country, whether it's in the military or in whatever it is that they're doing in their lives, and they're working. But I do find most of these people are very hardworking.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. They want to earn their living.
Yeah.
And they're sometimes working under very difficult situations, or being underpaid, or in a situation where there's kind of a risk, where they can't ask for a raise or they can't change jobs easily.
Right.
It makes it
or
very difficult.
just feeling fearful of driving to your job. Like, you know, Deborah was pulled aside, but there's so many people that are afraid to get in their car and go to their children's school, or go to church, go to the hospital, go to grocery shopping.
Daily activities we all take for granted.
Right.
Well, like you said before, nobody's going to tap you on the shoulder because of the way you look. Right. And having that over your head, the possibility that you're simply going to buy milk and all of a sudden you never come home again.
Yeah, I can't even imagine having to live with that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. You have some events coming up?
Actually, the original piece of this is going to be in an exhibition in the Hamptons. It's called Solar Plate Impressions, I think is the show. It's going to be at the old parish, I think the Southampton Art Center.
We'll put up the details on the video. Yeah.
And then we have the show at the Lower East Side Girls Club that should be up probably until January. And then sometimes I have some work right now at a tiny little gallery in Port Jefferson called Star Gallery, run by Anthony Frida, who's an amazing artist himself. He's done a lot of political work for the Times and
Anthony Frida.
Yeah, beautiful work. A lot of sort of collage and three-dimensional work as well. But
we can have a link to his information as well.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I think you would like his work. Yeah. So that's about it for right now.
What about social media? How can people contact you if they want to reach out to you?
I think through my website.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll put your website up.
Okay.
We'll also maybe include some information about Carlos.
Great.
And the idea would be really for anybody that's like-minded to get together and
Absolutely.
talk.
Yeah.
Maybe nothing comes of it. At least talk and see if maybe we can help each other. If there are all these artists out there who are in similar situations and maybe they're all alone, they feel that they have no support and nobody helping them either promote their art or at least just providing comfort.
Right.
And conversation, company.
I think this is so wonderful that you're doing this, that you actually care about your artists enough to try and promote their work or their ideas and bring more artists together as well.
Well, it became very apparent in talking to so many artists that there was a need for this. There's a need to get everybody together and to know each other. It's a struggle. A lot of artists are struggling. They may not be making money on their artwork. They may have second jobs, third jobs.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they can't work together, help each other, spread the word.
Right.
You know.
I was actually just also in a show at the Long Island Museum called Face to Face that was organized by a friend of mine named Doug Reyna, another artist, who came up with the idea of artists painting artists. And so one of your other clients, Nancy Weddy Randall, she and I painted one another, and I also painted Christian White, who was a local artist, and he painted me, and then I did painting
that's fantastic.
of Fuster, who is a Cuban artist who I've come to know when I visit Cuba. So yeah, it was one of the nicest shows I've seen, very well curated. But this was Doug Reyna's idea, and actually I'm going to be in a show, I think, with him soon, also out east somewhere. But,
that's an interesting concept.
But it brought artists from the East End and all over, and it was a fun opening.
Well, how much more can you're forcing someone, in a positive way to get to know that other person, right?
Absolutely, yeah. That's what he did.
That's now all of a sudden you see another human being at the other end,
right? And
you've made a new connection.
Yeah.
And with social media, there's no reason why then that can't spread throughout the country.
Exactly. Yeah.
And find much more like-minded people.
Yeah.
And
do you think us artists are going to take over the world?
Hopefully so. Well, I do. Like I said, I do appreciate they took. Like I said, I do think artists made a big difference in France in tourism, actually making a big change in the economy. Because beauty, right? There's a sense of that sometimes we don't appreciate it. We work in industrial buildings sometimes, and we don't appreciate the lack of art or the beauty around you. I mean, I remember from high school the brick building. It was just stone painted over stone, and that industrial look of many of the high schools and many of the government buildings. And I think that lacks beauty. Could students maybe be more interested in school if there was more beauty within the high school? If there was more of a flow instead of this industrial looking building, and there was more an opportunity to learn a little bit about art. Maybe then you learn a little bit more and a little bit more, and maybe appreciate it. Maybe that opens doors. It opens it enriches your mind. It enriches society.
I hope so. I think arts, though, unfortunately, are one of the first things to be
cut unfortunately so.
In high schools on Long Island, art,
Well, I grew up in Queens, and I remember one time when there was economic difficulties, and one of the first things that was closed was the libraries. And back then, there was no internet. Yeah, there was no. So, and I remember the libraries were either closed or they were closing early. So you get out of school and you couldn't go to the library because it was closed.
Oh, no.
So there was no appreciation. And that didn't happen for a long time, but it happened. And you would think that would be one of the last areas that would be affected.
Right.
Because children have to be educated and also a place to go. Sometimes it's just a place for a child to go after school if they have nowhere else to go.
Wow. You got to keep the arts and the education alive.
I do. I think it's fantastic. I think it's good to learn, even if you know nothing about art. It's just to get yourself educated with a tiny bit of information. Eventually buy one piece of art, learn more about it, grow your interests, grow your knowledge. Just look at it the same way as we do everything else in life, right? Anything else, whether it's a job that we have, a career, we start with zero, we slowly learn and we grow. Look at art that same way, because I think it could be intimidating because you talk to an artist who has a lot of experience. You have somebody like you with 30 years experience and more, right? You're way above anybody else that may be just starting to get interested in art. So that can be intimidating. So start small. Start, the person should feel that I don't know anything about art, but I'm open to it. And it might help me think differently, see things differently, see the world differently, see other people differently, be more accepting of other people, enrich my environment, have art at home, have art in your office, and slowly change your environment. Maybe make a happier person, a more creative person, and a person that's more involved with themselves and the outer world.
I guess that's why I've led some of the art workshops that I have with people that don't necessarily have those materials available to them.
Well, that's
Oh,
another
yeah,
point. That's
yeah.
a very good point, right? The materials themselves, just having the
Right.
materials available.
Right. So
That's
and-
something else that can be considered, right? And then
Mhm.
if anybody else watching this video has any ideas on that, that would be interesting.
Well, that's why Carlos and I worked with Sepa Mujer to try and, for some families who couldn't afford expensive Long Island summer camps for their kids, we offered some art workshops for them, for the families. Even the mothers would come as well, and the fathers. Some
that's
fathers,
really.
yeah. But we'd like to be able to continue doing things like that.
Sepa Mujer, SEPA, right?
Mhm.
Sepa Mujer,
Mujer.
MUJER.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we'll put a link to that as well, so
Okay.
people can look that up as
Okay.
well. Because again, that's the whole point, right? Share information, share
Right.
knowledge. People have resources.
Right.
We can all help each other.
Yeah.
And it could just be from the kindness of your heart, or the kind just to help other individuals.
Mm.
And you could drastically change a child's life if you provide them with the artistic tools,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had the opportunity. You said your mother gave you
Mhm.
the tools, but not everybody has that opportunity,
Right. Right.
right?
Exactly.
So if we can get more artists that have resources, or know of somebody that has resources
Mhm.
and is willing to spread the word and share resources and spread the knowledge,
Yeah.
it could have a big impact on
Yeah.
children,
Right.
adults, people's lives
Right.
in general.
Yeah. That's pretty much what Lynn Pentecost has done. So
Yeah, she has.
we need a Lynn Pentecost on Long Island.
That's correct. Yeah, somebody
to
like
organize
her.
us.
Yeah, no, she did. She did
Yeah.
extremely well with that girls' club.
Right.
It's an amazing concept, and something that'll outlive her.
Mm.
Will be there for after she's gone.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you.
Been wonderful talking to
Yeah,
you.
it's been very nice, and I do encourage people to reach out to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I hope they do.
Yeah, and we'll provide everybody's link. Everybody we discussed here, we'll provide their links,
Okay.
and hopefully we'll be able to get people to start talking to each other.
Good.
Okay.
Great.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you all, and thanks for listening. And please click on the links. Thank you.